Hi. So in this video, I'm going to talk about cryptocurrencies versus fiat currencies. First of all, to begin with, my stand is pro fiat, and I'm sort of against cryptocurrencies. And it's probably not the most popular choice to have, but I'll give you some of my reasons why I'm so. Now, keep in mind that when I try to grade your reports, I try to eliminate the biases that I have. Uh, what I'm looking for when I'm grading is essentially that if you were pro crypto and if you had good sound arguments, then I give you good marks. And if you were pro fiat but your arguments weren't strong, then again you don't get good marks. So the grading is essentially a function of how good or how strong or poor your arguments are in favor of either of your beliefs. Now, while reading some of your reports, a few things did stood out that I wanted to clarify. So first of all, a lot of you mentioned that again, as a negative against fiat currencies was that it's money created out of trust, and there is nothing that backs fiat currencies. But the same problem is also there with cryptocurrencies. Most of these coins that you have today, especially the altcoins, they are not backed by anything stable. So again, like most fiat currencies, these are also currencies that are built out of thin air. Of course, the only difference being that yes, they are probably more secure and cryptographically, you know, uh, somebody cannot steal them. But at the core of it, a Bitcoin does not have an underlying value. It's just a bunch of code that somebody created out of thin air, right? So it's an algorithm that Satoshi came up with, and everybody started accepting it. And again, the value of Bitcoins, or for that matter, any other altcoin, is a function of how many people believe in it. And the reason why it keeps going up or keeps falling down is again because of how much people trust in that cryptocurrency. So, like the US dollar, like the euro, like the Japanese yen, cryptocurrencies are also backed by trust. There's money created out of thin air. So, trust is not a differentiating factor between fiat or cryptocurrencies, and if you use that as an argument, then it's slightly flawed. The next major concern that I had was when people talk about inflation. Now, there are two things that jump out of it, and a lot of you mentioned Venezuela and Zimbabwe in your arguments, and how hyperinflation is bad and it's caused those economies to crumble. Now, it's not the currency that crumbles first. The currency is sort of it, and as you probably looked at chapters 7 and 8, the currency is sort of a manifest of what's happening in the economy, how good its trade is happening. So how much there is demand or supply of the currency, as well as how much people want to invest in these countries, right? So the demand stems from how much people want to buy goods and services from a given country, and the other part of the demand stems from how much people want to invest in that country. Now, if the underlying economy is weak and there's a lot of corruption, then obviously the demand for such currencies is going to fall and weaken. So, at the end of the day, it's not the problem of the currency, rather it's the government's weakness, or it's sort of a system failure that drives what happened in Venezuela and Zimbabwe. And it's wrong to blame the currency for it. The currency is sort of a manifestation of the underlying problems that are plaguing the economy. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out about inflation is, and a lot of you think that uh, fiat currency, or by definition, creates price inflation. Now, the other alternative is something like a gold standard, right? Now, uh, one could think about if a world were to transition into something like everybody traded bitcoins and that was the global currency, then there would be no inflation. Now, that's again flawed. So even when the entire world, or most of the developed world, was using the gold standard, even then there was inflation. So just by switching to a gold like commodity, or cryptocurrencies for this matter, if the world were to transition over to bitcoins, it's not necessary that inflation would be wiped away, right? So prices would still change, and even when we had the gold standard, even in the US, there was inflation. And the big proponents of the whole uh, gold back standard, the Austrian school of economics, even they agree that price stability is sort of not an overarching theme that they have in favor of a stable currency. So by moving back to a gold standard or to bitcoins or any other cryptocurrency, you're not going to have zero inflation. You still be having inflation. Uh, Now, a lot of you, when you talk about the adoption of cryptocurrencies, you talk about technology. And one of the things that everybody favors is that, yes, the technology behind cryptocurrencies is really great and it can remove, a lot of issues that we have with the middlemen, and how it eliminates middlemen from the entire system and becomes more efficient. Now, if the technology is that good, then there are two things that come to mind, right? First is the example of Sweden. Now, Sweden is toying with the idea of having the Swedish krona, which Sweden is one of the few countries, even though they are part of the European Union, they still have their own independent currency, the Swedish krona. And Sweden again is a country which is extremely high on the adoption of technology, and most of the country is already gone cashless, meaning that most of the transactions that occur in Sweden are, digital, but it's still a fiat currency. Again, this was one of the big things that I found when I read in a lot of your arguments. Fiat is not synonymous with the printed money or with the hard cash. Fiat can be digital, and again, Sweden is an example where 75 to 80% of all transactions, versus probably around 50% in the US, are all done digitally. So the country is almost moved to a digital system, but again, the currency is still fiat, right? So what Sweden is trying to do and accomplish is that it's trying to come up with their own blockchain based fiat currency. So, Jamie Dimon, again, the CEO of JP Morgan, he was one of the big people against cryptocurrency, and now they are trying to come up with their own currency again. You know, what they are trying to do is they are trying to adopt the technology and not per se currencies. So even though they are using the technology like Sweden or JP Morgan, uh, they're not using cryptos. So, if the technology is good, the governments or people or financial institutions, what they'll do is they'll adopt the technology and leave out the bad parts, which I'll go into why cryptocurrencies, at least according to me, are flawed. So here is the core problem with cryptocurrencies. Uh, the first, and some of you did get there, and I was really impressed by those who did, were able to come to these core problems. One of the core problems with cryptocurrency is uh, the stability versus store of value. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, let's assume that bitcoins were to replace all currencies in the world. Like the world unanimously agreed that tomorrow we are going to all change uh, to cryptocurrencies, and as the transition happens, as more and more people start adopting cryptocurrencies, the price of Bitcoin is going to keep increasing, right? So by definition, as the price keeps changing or keeps fluctuating depending on the adoption, it's not going to remain stable, which is again one of the key characteristics that you want to have uh, in a currency. So for the value of Bitcoin to go up, you need more and more people to start adopting the currency. But as more and more people start adopting the currency loses stability. So it's sort of like a catch-22 situation where the currency cannot become uh, a stable currency which people will trade with, right? Because if in the future more people are going to adopt the currency, you know that the value is going to go up, right? And if you know that, you're never going to use it for trading commodities or for day-to-day use, because you know that it's going to be worth more tomorrow, right? And so not many transactions are going to happen with Bitcoin. So there lies the rub, right? Uh, you understand? I hope you understand. You know, the fundamental flaw with the whole adoption versus stability that's going on with cryptocurrencies. Now, the second core problem that I think which sort of prevents mass adoption of cryptocurrencies is the origin. The origin of cryptocurrencies stems from the fact that there were a bunch of these uh, sort of rebels who did not want government to regulate transactions that happen between two individuals. Right? That's sort of the origin story. That hey, we are going to have a system where we can step away from the government and ask the government not to regulate money and how transactions are made. Right? The problem is that for anything to become more uh, that more people start trusting, the government needs to regulate it. Now, the more regulation happens, it loses its original ideals, right? So, at the core lies this whole, uh, you know, struggle between, being free from the government versus not having something trustworthy enough that everybody is going to buy in, right? So, the more and more governments, as they start regulating it, you know, the original proponents are going to go away and stay away from these cryptocurrencies, and thereby, you know, uh, the wider adoption of cryptos is going to get flawed. Now, again, there are several other issues that make the whole, cryptocurrency debate, one directional for me. As of today, there are more than 1,500 cryptocurrencies. Why is one going to be the currency of the future and not the other? So how do you choose between the 1,500 plus altcoins that you have, right? Now, whenever you're talking about cryptos, now you have to differentiate between altcoins and stable coins. An altcoin is something like a Bitcoin, right? Which doesn't derive its value from anything. A stable coin, on the other hand, has some fundamental valuation. For example, the much touted Libra is a stable coin, and it's not. It's going to be a stable coin, and it's not going to be an altcoin, because what Facebook is planning to do is it's planning to have a backing of 100 billion US dollars that are going to support the value of Libra. So essentially, Facebook is going to operate like a bank, and Libra is going to be a stable coin and not an altcoin. So they're not creating a new currency. All they are saying is that Libra is going to be some sort of tokens which you can exchange for US dollars whenever you want, and they're going to be backed by this 100 billion US dollars kept to support Libra. Uh, so how do you differentiate, or how do you pick between these 1,500 coins? Now, one of the reasons which made me such a staunch believer that cryptocurrencies aren't going to change the world is an examples of something like the dog coin. It was created out of humor, and even their founders, they said that it was just a prank that they pulled, and today that same dog coin is worth $360 million, right? So the very fact that somebody just created something out of thin air and now it's worth millions of dollars, and even though it was a prank, all it took was Elon Musk tweeting that this is his favorite currency, and even though he probably meant it in jest, everybody's taking it that seriously, and today it is valued at $360 billion, and that's just insane, and it points to nothing but mania, right? So these are some of the core issues that I have with the overall debate, and I hope uh, that you enjoyed reading the papers and coming up with an explanation or an argument that hopefully satisfies you as to which currency you should be saving your future wealth in. So for me, it's going to be fiat, and if it's cryptocurrencies for you, all the best. Good luck, and in a few years down the line, we're going to see what happens eventually. But remember that no government is going to easily give up their control over monetary supply, right? The moment they agree to allowing cryptos or any other form of currencies to operate, they're giving up money supply, right? And money supply is one of the strongest tools that they have to rein in or control the economy. And it's going to be very difficult fight if cryptos were, to replace what you have in terms of fiat currencies today. And I think it's a battle. It's a very uphill battle, and I don't believe that cryptos are going to be able to win that. But if you believe that yes, that's going to happen, then you should. But then again, if you do believe that, you still have to resolve those two core uh, sort of dilemmas, right? So the stable versus store of value argument. If people are going to believe that yes, bitcoins are going to replace dollars, then the value of bitcoins is going to keep increasing because of the fixed supply of bitcoins. Uh, and again, if you know that the value of the bitcoin is going to keep increasing, logically it doesn't make sense for you to keep trading or buying commodities with bitcoins, because tomorrow it's going to be worth much more. So how do you reconcile this dilemma? So those were my few thoughts, and I hope you enjoyed doing the project, and I hope that you agree with the grades I've given you. If you still have any questions, please feel free to reach back to me. Thank you.